Hi, I'm David Smith, GM of Dynamics Partner here in the U.S. subsidiary. Today is the next in the series from the cloud. Today we're super lucky to have one of our best partners, 0 to 10, talk to us about building a profitable, sustainable services practice. From 0 to 10 we have David Kohar, who I've had the privilege of working with for several years, vast and deep experience in our channel here in Dynamics in the U.S. And really looking forward to getting some insight from you in terms of what you've learned and where you're thinking your practice is headed in terms of how you develop relationships with the customers that you do acquire. So maybe we start by letting you give the audience a little bit of information about 0 to 10 and yourself.
Sure. Thanks, David. Thanks for having us here this morning. I'm David Kohar. I'm the Chief Business Architect over at 0 to 10. And we are a CRM Online partner. We've been focusing on this market here for about 2.5 years. We actually architected in the beginnings of the company right when CRM Online was actually launching. Yep. So it was actually kind of a nice fit to be able to really work with you guys right from the very beginning of CRM Online hitting the marketplace. We've been going after CRM Online organizations or customers that are interested in actually being in the cloud here for a while. We've learned a lot of things along the way. A lot of things have worked, some things of course haven't, as always is the case. And we've been fortunate enough to work with some of the largest CRM Online customers that are deployed here currently. And of course that's also given us lots of good experience to draw on for moving forward here as we go into the launch here of CRM 2011 and move into some big things.
Yeah, lots of great experiences and certainly some great results. Now I know from working with you that you clearly understand that not all customers buy the same way. Are there things that you've learned in terms of what customers are willing to pay from a services perspective as you offer them offerings in the cloud?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. What we're finding is that again, this is just sort of just the trend we're seeing in general. So what I'm noticing with our colleagues here at the organization is that people really expect this to be much more of a packaged service, right? So they come to Microsoft initially. They're interested in, for instance, doing a 30-day trial. And so what they're tending to do is spin up a trial. And for the most part, they actually just want to evaluate the solution. They want to understand how much of this could they actually do themselves. So what's interesting for us is as we get engaged in working with you guys around these opportunities and working with these organizations is that they have a different expectation than maybe what was in the past where a services partner or Microsoft would together come to their organization, show up physically, be there for multiple discussions and meetings and demos and then look at these large services engagements. We just haven't seen that for the most part with organizations that are actually starting with moving to the cloud to begin with. Not that that never happens. Large organizations still have their enterprise processes in place, but what we're seeing a lot more of is that customers are looking to consume this in a much more iterative fashion. They want to, what can I get done in 1 week or 4 weeks or whatever have you. Yeah. This is not a 6-month, 12-month sort of time horizon for most organizations.
Yeah. I think that point about large enterprises buy perhaps in a different way than small enterprises is a really important one. How are you feeling their pocketbooks are? Are the small enterprises as willing to pay as much for services as the large enterprises?
Yeah, clearly they don't have the same pocketbook. So that, again, the expectation on our side, of course, has to be gated correctly, right? So if we're going after an organization that we know is only going to be able to spend $10,000 or $50,000, right? We have to consume that from a sales process and a sales cycle time in a most appropriate way. We can't go and spend $75,000 and go make 50 because, as the old saying goes, you can't make that up in volume, right? So we are very careful around how we actually run our sales process. We are very much a virtual organization, so not that we'll never show up physically to a customer, whether it's in the implementation or in the sales cycle, but we actually ask ourselves that question all the time. Why are we getting on a plane, or why are we actually going over to this organization physically to see them all the time? And the interesting thing about it is, if they're actually consuming this service in the cloud, they all of a sudden have this different expectation that they don't need to see David and David every single meeting because they realize that all of this can be done, or a lot more of it can be done virtually, which has been a big factor in our success.
Yeah. So are there specific ways that you've been sort of packaging up your pitch or your solution, especially for the ones, let's say on the lower end, smaller users, smaller customer as a specific example? where you have a really tightly packaged solution that's easy to, for the customer or the opportunity to comprehend and maybe understand that, hey, they're not going to get a high-touch, expensive cost of sales experience from your side?
Yeah, yeah. We really have sort of 3 tiers. So think of it as the first tier is the customer that clearly wants to do it themselves. And actually, we've built a whole program around helping those organizations without necessarily having any expectation on our end or on their end that they'll ever even do $1 worth of services with us. And we've built a program around that we've been successfully working with you guys around that here in the U.S. and actually looking to roll that out here internationally. That's sort of our first level of customer. Our next level of customer is one that is looking for a services experience and an approach around that. And a lot of times we'll actually run our sales cycle very virtually with them. In fact, we'll actually almost run our entire delivery of that implementation virtually. There are actually customers out there that we've actually done multiple phases with that we've never physically actually met yet. So very much that is that second tier of organization. And then we sort of call the next tier up as our gazelles or our high growth companies or the enterprise organizations that are looking to move fast. Now, traditional enterprises still want to consume a lot of times services in the ways they have in the past, but we're seeing a big trend of organizations saying, forget all that stuff from the past. Forget you're not coming in here with 10 consultants for the next 12 months. What we want to know is how can we add value here to organization in the next 60 days or 90 days. And so even with the large organizations, we're continually packaging up our approach, which, by the way, for us, what's made the most sense for us in terms of how we've architected the services model for us is to do everything fixed fee. So it actually gets our team and our mentality around our team, not around billable hours necessarily, but more around how do we actually get through the milestones of the project? How do we actually get this customer live and successful and whatnot? So that's sort of been our sort of 3-tier approach with customers.
I love that 3-tier approach. I mean, that level of precision, I think, is exactly what it takes to be successful long term. Now, internally, in terms of how you run your organization, is there ways that you think about those 3 tiers in terms of the KPIs and how you measure progress against each of those tiers? How are you running the business from an internal perspective relative to how you're delivering these solutions?
Yeah, good question. So Tier 1, which is our Learning Labs program, very much around how quickly actually are we converting them to become a Microsoft customer is our big number 1 KPI in that area, because our expectation in that area is that we're going to grow those customers very organically over time here with respect to just different service offerings and different packages that they may want to consume, without actually ever consuming maybe a quote unquote an hour even of billable services. So very much the KPI there is conversion. The second tier up is what we would consider more of a turns on our customer implementations. So we'll look at it and say, how many days is it taking us actually to run through this this project itself? So because everything's fixed fee for us, where the costs actually start creeping up in our organization, of course, is when projects get extended out. Even if we're not working on it, of course, there's always overhead with having projects active, right? So for us, it's really that the number of turns we're doing on the projects. In the gazelle or the enterprise space, as we call it, it is much more some of the traditional KPIs, right? We're running much larger engagements with very senior people on our side, so we're looking more for our hitting our milestones in a predictable fashion there.
Now, we talked earlier before we started the shoot a little bit about how you're getting some really good learnings in terms of seeding an account, perhaps with just a few seats of a cloud-based solution, and then the types of things that you do to sort of expand that footprint over time. Now, there's a couple pivots there. One is how you handle that conversation in a low-cost way to get the expansion. The other one is what role services might play or might not play, because as we know in the cloud, it's not necessarily a critical thing that the customer always buys services with every additional seat that they get. So how are you thinking about seeding and expanding and services? How are you tying those all together?
Yeah. So slightly different strategy in each one of those categories, but in general, we're looking at it from the standpoint of how do we continue to get these organizations to move forward with their implementation, right? So that can look very differently depending on what that customer is actually wanting to do. So it may not be that every time they're always consuming, like you said, services to do certain things. So we're actually just looking at how do we continue to get them to be successful with the platform, because we know that that can go a variety of ways, right? So a sales automation project can turn into a service project, ultimately, or move into an XRM solution, or quite frankly, they start to like the idea of consuming anything in the cloud, right? So then the Office 360 and other types of solutions start becoming more and more important to them. Now, we're not necessarily an Office 365 partner, but we see it as organizations are using CRM in a lot of ways to test their move to the cloud as an organization, right? They're running a bunch of stuff on premise. They try this in the cloud. They realize that actually it has the advantages that they've been reading about or thinking about. And so we're seeing that we're looking for those opportunities to kind of keep advancing their abilities to do that. We have a couple of really fantastic partners that we work with that are doing some very interesting things in the cloud with web intelligence, with mobility, with just a lot of the social CRM things that are going on right now. So we see those as being very complementary to the expansion and footprint there. So not always services, to your point, and that's a great point from our standpoint. And we try as a company, as much as we're a services company, we try not to get caught up in everything has to be about services. It's just about how do we kind of expand their footprint is our big thing.
Yeah, the partner-to-partner play is a very interesting one. Have you thought about or experimenting at all with the different sort of flavors of the services offerings you could have? For example, maybe not something traditional related to integration or customization of their cloud solution, but more around business process related to that vertical or that industry that the customer is in.
Yeah, so we're starting to see more vertical plays, and this is one of the wonderful things about all of us moving more to the cloud is that people are getting really innovative, and it's fun to watch even the other partners as they get smart on a particular vertical, and they realize it's actually a lot easier to market and to sell and to deliver this service in this way. So we're seeing some good things in the vertical area. We're also seeing a big push, and this is one of our big things right now, is how do we get really down to the granular user adoption, things that are just happening and plaguing still these implementations, ongoing. My constant sort of analogy to customers is you never get on an analyst call with an organization, a Fortune 500 company, and the CFO says to the analyst on the street, by the way, we don't have our results because our accountants decided they didn't want to use the ERP system this last quarter, so we never calculated anything, right? Whereas the industry in general is plagued with Salesforce automation or CRM projects where people just aren't using it as much as they should. So our big thing is how do we continue to push adoption at the very tactical level as well as at the strategic level. So that's actually one of our more packaged offerings that we're looking to push organizations on.
Okay. I was thinking maybe I would take it in the direction now of asking you a little bit to open up the hood in terms of how maybe you think about staffing your organization or your expansion, because that's in many ways some of the toughest decisions our partners need to make on a day-to-day basis. How do you think in terms of adding an additional services head, adding a marketing head, or adding a sales head, given these tiered approaches that you're taking and the different aspects of seeding versus growing? Has it changed the way you think about building your services practice?
It has. So what's interesting is, and again, I always preface these kind of answers with, this is just the reality that we've created for ourselves, right? Good or bad. But one of the things that is more and more interesting, right? And as I always think about how these platforms are getting better and better and easier to use, is that our big thing is our magic isn't in how do we go and customize CRM at the end, right? Because dragging and dropping fields is for the everyday person now, right? So that's something that we want to push more and more onto our customers to actually do. In fact, for us, it doesn't make sense that we're over and over again adding fields onto forms and doing things like that. We want them to be able to do that kind of stuff. So the way we then architect our delivery teams and how we staff and how we expand is really around how do we continue to add people that can add value to helping them think through and build the right blueprint or the right design for actually implementing their CRM system, not who are all the people that are going to do all the development and configuration around it. Now, customers still need that kind of service, and it's appropriate for us to be doing it up front. But we're thinking differently about the pyramid, I guess, is what we're doing, or that's the reality that we've put ourselves into, and we're continuing to expand in that way.
I think that is definitely a great blueprint for how to think about it. Looking forward, maybe one final question would be, how do you think with your team, with the leadership team of your organization, and frankly with everybody in your organization, about setting aspirational goals for winning and taking share in the cloud? Certainly we know it's not easy, we have stiff competition out there, and we're not the only player at the game. So how do you set aspirational goals for your team where you say, maybe 25 customer ads a year in the cloud-based solution would have seemed a year ago to be enough, but really we've got to be thinking in terms of hundreds, if not thousands, of customers. How do you get the team fired up about that?
Yeah. We're that's probably one of our biggest strengths in the company is the level of creativity and thinking big. So our big thing all the time is how do we look at what everybody else is doing and try to keep breaking that paradigm. So one of the paradigms we're trying to break right now is one of the the most customer ads for a given year. We're looking at it and saying, you know what, that'll be an interesting milestone to hit and everybody will be happy about it for all of 5 minutes, but we're already thinking about how do we do 10x that the year after, or 5x that the year after, and really how do we expand in a big way. So our organization in general, especially our leadership, is very much around how does everything work 5 times faster, and how does everything be 10 times bigger, right? So we constantly look at it that way, and quite frankly, it does get everyone energized, right? It gets everyone a little nervous, and it gets everyone energized at the same time because they're like, how could we possibly do that? But what it does do is it constantly makes us, take off that hat of, oh, things have to happen in a certain way, or oh, we have to do things the way that they've always been done. It really does make us change and constantly think about how to do this differently.
Well, I think the way you answer that is what I know you best for. It's this passion to go big. I know you're really going to hit it big with the cloud and with your services practice in a sustainable way over the long term. I want to thank you, David, in 0 to 10 for giving our audience just an amazing set of blueprints and frameworks and ideas for how to build a profitable and sustainable services practice that is cloud-oriented. This is David Smith, again, with the U.S. subsidiary, GM of Dynamics Partner. I want to thank you for joining us in this series of From the Cloud, and looking forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.